in the world that you have in your congregation and just turn over the responsibility of talking about hunger to them. The problem is sometimes the pastor is the most creative, crazy person in the church and can actually get even the director for ELCA World Hunger killed. So I'd like to welcome today Michael Poole, who is going to tell you a little bit why we're here.
Good morning. It's nice to be with you. I turned 50 in November, and so I decided to wear a kilt every day from my 50th to 51st birthday, which turned out to be the coldest winter we had in Ohio this year, and my parish has decided to blame me for that. But I did it to raise awareness, to raise advocacy, to raise action, and also to raise funds for two organizations, one being ELCA World Hunger, the other being the American Cancer Society. A few years ago, a colleague of mine and I started a grassroots movement that focuses on congregational engagement called Potlucks to End World Hunger. And so that's how we got hooked up with Dan and all of that. So we're here, and I was invited to come here, and we're having a little gathering afterwards. But when we were talking about this, I said, oh, we'll get the entire World Hunger staff in kilts. And I did fairly well. If you look around, you'll see later on in the presentation, I'm going to have the model kilts. So thank you for having me, and it's a joint pleasure.
It's not the kilt, it's the jacket.
It's the jacket.
Thank you.
And welcome any who would like to know more about this to a brown bag lunch, and we'll provide dessert after worship today. I also want to welcome Ann Prince Organ, who is playing the organ today, and from St. Luke's Lutheran Church in Park Ridge. We're privileged to have you, and thank you for sharing your gifts with us. Are there other visitors here today?
Global Mission has visitors from Denmark and Norway, from Mission Africa, which is a mission organization that relates to some of our partners in Africa. So they've been visiting for 2 days.
Welcome.
Welcome.
And your family?
A multitude standing out. A good friend of mine once told me, being your friend is exhausting. And that was when I was still wearing pants, too. And I said, Sarah, what does that mean? She goes, you know, anytime we go anywhere, anytime we do anything, we are always that table. And I said, what do you mean by that? She goes, we are always the table. You know, when you go somewhere and it's like the activity's at a fevered pitch, almost like out of control. And the waitstaff, not only the ones assigned to our section, but the entire restaurant or place's waitstaff is waiting on us. And people coming by are engaged. And it is exhausting to always be that table. To always be standing out. To always kind of have people looking at you, asking you questions. I have tried to be that table for issues in the kingdom. See, I've been an advocate. I've been for a while with World Hunger. Even before that, a participant and a voice for Lutheran disaster response. I've spent time speaking and engaging on issues of cancer. I've participated in issues dealing with malaria. I've been a pastor for 10 years, a child of God for 50. I've been trying to stand out for issues in the kingdom. But it's been interesting. Because you see, I can put on t-shirts or hats or signs or literature that says, ask me about ending hunger. Right? Ask me about how do we fight cancer. Ask me about malaria. Ask me about the Lutheran Church. Ask me about Jesus, God. Ask me. What I found is 99.9% of the time, people don't ask. 206 days ago, I decided to stop wearing pants. Right? And it's been interesting. Because you see, before, no one would cross the street to ask me. No one would stop me in the grocery store. No one would interrupt us during dinner. I was not even asked to come to Chicago to preach a churchwide chapel. Testify. Right. Thank you. But you see, now, people yell down the street, "Hey!" And people grab my cart in Giant Eagle. Right? And people interrupt us when we're out at dinner and in the middle of eating and engage me, and they say, "Why?" I was called into question, right? The reading this morning talked about giving a defense. And I was called into question earlier this month on an online forum I was not a member of. I really don't enjoy those forums, in all honesty. But I was getting messages from friends saying, you got to get on this, they are calling you out. That. So I got on the forum, and apparently I'm being, and a colleague of mine said, "Well, he's just doing this," who I've never met. "I've read the article in the Lutheran. He's just doing this because he likes wearing kilts and he wants to do something that's outside of the rules just for himself." I said, "Whoa." I said, "Let me tell you a story." You see, the reason I'm doing this, yes, I like wearing kilts. I have 10 of them. But the reason I do it is because, you see, when people stop me and when people confront me and yell at me, I get to tell them a story. See, I get a few minutes to tell them about Dan and his staff, who are doing phenomenal things to work against hunger and hunger-related issues. I get to tell them about Jessica and what we're trying to do in sub-Saharan Africa to combat malaria. And I get to tell them about my best friend who battled cancer for 16 months. And I get to tell them about a friend of mine who I can't call Suzanne anymore. I have to call her Bishop. Right? And the wonderful things the Lutheran Church is doing in Southern Ohio. And I get to tell them about my, I don't think she's here, my Northeastern Ohio neighbor, the presiding bishop, who has worn kilts, by the way. They asked her back in college. Right? Had a piper even at their installation. And the church that she leads, right, that has a theology in what we do. We call that theology the theology of a company. You see, I get to tell people about a church that doesn't help people by standing at the edge of a hole and maybe throwing something down, a bag of food or money, and then say, figure out how to get out of the hole yourself. That's not what I get to tell them about a church that says we are going to accompany you. We are going to walk with you in the midst of it all. And we're going to listen to you. And we're going to find out what you tell us you need. And we're going to do everything to be with you, not only the short term, but the long term. I get to tell them about a God, a triune God, who has known them, known the number of hairs on their head, known them and been in relationship with them since before the womb. I get to tell them about that God because I stood out a little bit. The reading today, the author of Peter says, you should always be ready to give an account, a demand for the reasons why you have hope. Here's the question I have for us today, brothers and sisters. If we're not standing out,
how does the world know to demand an account from us? You see, if we look like the world, and we talk like the world, and we act like the world just thinks we're the world. And they'll never ask us. Right? They'll never demand an account from us because we are not different. See, what we're hearing here is that we have to be different. We have to stand out. Not for ourselves, but for the kingdom. For the God that we worship, we have to stand out enough that people see that we are different and call us into question. Now, I'm a cradle Lutheran, which means I know two things really well. Lutheran piety and Lutheran guilt. And I know it is a guilty thing to stand up and be noticed. That's what we've taught ourselves. I don't think that's what Scripture tells us. You see, Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, I'll even go back a little bit farther. I'll go back to the reading. Where do we get this demand to stand out? The reading tells us once again, and it's where we started worship today. In the waters of baptism. See, the most exciting part of baptism for me is after they're dripping wet, and I get them dripping wet, soaking wet. You ever see me done? If I had this fond of my parish, right, we'd be getting real wet, right? But I do the best I can getting them wet, and so water's pouring down their face, and then I get them dripping wet with the oil, right? As I seal them, the promised Holy Spirit, and anoint them with all their inheritance. And then, my favorite part, I get a candle. And I walk up to a candle just like this, right? Representing the light of Christ, and I light their candle off of this candle. And then I get right in their face, enough that they can feel the warmth, and that their breath flickers the flame. Especially if they're young, you can see in their eyes. And then I say to them the very words that Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount to his followers. Let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your God in heaven. Let your light shine. Stand out. Jesus goes on in the Sermon on the Mount and says, you are completed action already, the light of the world. Let your light shine. Don't put it under a bushel basket. Let it shine. Stand out for the kingdom. Be the light for a world that needs hope. Be a flicker for a world that believes it's in darkness. Stand out so people know where to go. We're called to stand out. Now, the question that has been asked of me on November 4th of this year, on November 5th of this year, really, and my family that really asked the question the most, are you going to go back to wearing pants? Right. I have to say I don't know. Because here's the thing, folks. If I go back to wearing pants, is anybody going to ask me the questions anymore? Tell them about Dan. Do I get to tell them about you? How many of us, don't raise your hands, right, have one of them yellow t-shirts? It says what on it?
God's hands.
Right. And now we're pulling them out every once in a while. And see, I said we need enough shirts that we wear one every day. That everything we do is God's work. That we live our lives. That we have a mindset change. so that the world sees us and knows to come to us and demand a reason for our hope. Right? So, hopefully we put orders in for those shirts and they can't print enough. But the truth is this. The truth we heard about in the gospel. The truth is this. It's not what we wear that causes us to stand out. Jesus says to his disciples, they, the world, will know you are my disciples by your love for one another. Right? They will know by our love, they will know. Right? We have to live into that hymn. The world will know to demand from us an accounting of our hope by our love for the world, by what we say to them, and by how we treat them, by how we act with them, and how we accompany them, and how we walk with them. And they'll want to know that hope. And they'll come to us and ask us questions, demand an accounting, so that they may have that same hope. So, as we leave here today, I would like to tell you that we take Chicago, we take off our pants and take Chicago by storm.
Wow.
I'm still bound by vision and expectation, so I don't know if I... Right? But I think we need to take the world by storm, by letting our light shine, by finding a way, like Dan said, to stand out in the world so that people ask you questions, so that your lights shine. A light that no darkness can overcome. Right? Stand out so people ask you. Because as you stand out, you stand in a great company, a great cloud of witnesses surrounds you, whose lights have shone in the darkness before, whose good works have inspired generations. And you already, right now, stand out in great company.